Hospitality Meets is brought to you by RotaCloud, the simple workforce management software for hospitality teams. RotaCloud lets you create and share rotas, record attendance, and manage your team's annual leave, all in less time than it takes to make a brew. It can also make life easier for your staff, allowing them to check their rotas, request holiday, and even pick up extra shifts, all through the RotaCloud mobile app. Start your 30-day free trial today by visiting rotacloud.com/Phil and find out how much easier managing your team can be. Welcome to Hospitality Meets with me, Phil Street, where each week we take a light-hearted look into the stories and individuals that make up the wonderful world of hospitality. Today's guest is Phil Shelley, Senior Operational Manager for NHS England and Chair of the NHS Food Review. Coming up on today's show, Guest Phil offers host Phil a job.
Phil, you need to come and work in the NHS as a chef.
Host Phil speaks the truth. Two Phils don't make a right. And Guest Phil tells us the name of his upcoming jazz tour.
The Phil Shelley Review.
All that and so much more as we chat through Phil's epic journey so far. I can't even begin to tell you what a joy it was to get some time with Phil, what an incredible role he has, with an absolute stunner of a story to boot, with inspiration and humour all the way through our chat. So please don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give us a like and a share wherever you can. Enjoy! And a huge Hospitality Meets welcome to Phil Shelley.
Hi Phil, good to meet you.
How are you doing?
We're looking forward to this.
Yes, yeah. How's life?
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, we're bang in the middle of a heat wave, aren't we, right now?
We certainly are.
So it's kind of finding the right space, particularly during the working day. But no, all good.
Yes, I have not found the right space during the working day in my hot box bedroom in the upstairs, out of the way, which is good for recordings, but not for much else.
We're going to get through it.
Yes, absolutely. So let's get some Phil cliches out of the way straight away. Two Phils don't make a right. That's one that I've heard. Well, let's see if that's true. And then somebody once told me, who actually incidentally was also called Phil, that he'd never met a bad one. And I thought, I like that, because yes. I have been in search of a bad Phil. Actually, there's one on TV that we probably shouldn't go anywhere near. But yeah, so far haven't met a bad Phil. So pressure's over to you.
I'll try and maintain that profile.
Brilliant. Yes. So just tell the world what it is that you do, Phil, because I think you've got one of the most interesting job titles, certainly, and I'm sure we'll get into the role itself as well, that I think I've come across since I've been doing the show. Set that up well, haven't I?
Yeah, you have set that up very nicely. Thank you. Well, we do like a job title in the NHS, as you know. I'm not always sure that the job title describes fully what we do, but you kind of, I think you build your profile around that, and that's important. Yeah, I'm Senior Operational and Policy Manager, and that's kind of for the soft FM team, facilities management team at NHS England, and national lead for food, particularly around net zero sustainability angle. But my role is to support hospital sites around the country within the NHS England bracket, and visit them as much as I can, but obviously sometimes it needs to be on Teams, and kind of advise them around quality, around workforce, menu planning, and the sustainability channel. So I've got to say, Phil, I love my job. You know, it doesn't always feel that way for people, but, you know, following things that happened in recent years, I slotted into this role a good few years ago, and yeah, I feel very privileged.
That's awesome. I mean, look, there's a lot to be said for just waking up and loving what you do, right? I mean, that is the dream, I think, when it comes to building a career. Yeah,
no, absolutely. Of course, you know, we get those times of the day and of the week where you think, gosh, I'm not really sure which way to turn. And
yeah,
you know, you have to kind of list your challenges down and not choose the easy ones, but choose the ones that need to be done and prioritize them. But yeah, I think working in the public sector and healthcare in particular for me is a very special topic.
No doubt. It sounds like a behemoth of a role as well. I mean, and a lot of responsibility in terms of, because I think when you and I met recently as well, we were talking about this, you know, nutrition and food itself is part of the healing process. So to get that right has got to be a big pressure on your shoulders, I would imagine.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like a pressure, because I suppose I'm old enough that I've been doing the role for quite some time. We've always said, kind of, as you said, good food is medicine, and therefore food needs to be at the centre of recovery within healthcare. But I think the reason I don't feel quite so pressurized anymore is I have met so many amazing people along the way, just not just foodies, but on a dietetic and nutritional point of view, as well as a nursing and clinical. And everybody is trying to do the best that they can in their role to support that recovery. It is very rare you walk into a hospital site and think nobody's focused on the job in hand here. Everybody is doing their best, and that's why I think it's a privilege, because the job is around bringing people together and just kind of getting them to be focused on what we feel is important.
Yeah. I mean, that's the secret, isn't it? To get everybody together and
Yeah,
actually pushing in the same direction.
yeah, no, absolutely, and we get distracted, don't we?
We
I
definitely do.
think right now, a big distraction, particularly for anyone involved in food right now, is around finance and around the cost of food, and we kind of build around value rather than cost. So think about what is value for money, what is seasonal right now, and the partnership that we have with our food suppliers is so important. Speak to them and get the best deals. So trying to, don't try and get rid of your responsibility, but share those challenges that you have and speak to the right people. So it's great, and you can see such variety around the different regions, within NHS England. So depending where you are, there are slightly different challenges, but there is the same focus.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, I'm sure we'll come back to that in the fullness of the discussion, just to see what you've got your head in now. But you obviously didn't land at this job, you built to it. So take us all the way back, Phil, to the very beginning of your career. How did you get involved in hospitality in the first place?
Hmm. Well, yeah, it was always a bit of a strange one, because when you speak to youngsters now, they're very, very focused on what they want to do, not always on a job, but a career path, and particularly educational. And when I was younger, it kind of didn't feel that way. And therefore, I was looking to land into something that would kind of start to support a future for me. And I went to a careers fair in Somerset, and decided that the Merchant Navy would be a great way of learning around food. So I very quickly signed up and started to learn around food in that way. I didn't last particularly long, because they were very keen to tell me. I traveled around for about probably nearly 2 years. I traveled around the world and saw some amazing sites, met some great people. But if I wanted to get on in the catering world, I needed some education. And to do that, you would have to come back on land. And once I'd kind of been back on land for a good year or so and get some education behind me around food, I kind of found other things and thought, I don't really want to go back now. I want to get back into the hotel world and restaurant world. So trained as a chef, came through that, and then linked up with Trust House 40. And that was, an amazing opportunity. First of all, working at near Heathrow Airport on the A4 Bath Road, a beautiful hotel called the Skyway. But I suppose for me, a standout was working at the Imperial Hotel in Torquay. Amazing five-star hotel at the time, where we had gastronomic weekends, and it was the place to be, as we call it, the English Riviera down
Yeah,
in
indeed.
Devon. So it was great. That was probably, when you look back, that was my first encounter with how food should look like on the plate. And you and I have spoken about, what's the secret sometimes of getting it right. And as much as you need an amazing chef and you may need amazing suppliers, it is always about that final journey, isn't it? Of how does food look on the plate? And I think for me at the Imperial, that taught me, first of all, is good food should look amazing. So that was my first encounter, really, Phil.
Right, right, right. Lovely that you started life in the old merchant navy. There's I wouldn't classify it as a merchant navy. I started my career on cruise ships, but
Yeah.
maybe a little bit more glamorous. I don't know, but we always used to have guys off the merchant navy who'd come and shadow us in terms of what we were doing from a food offer, and then they would offer us to do the same. It was just an amazing experience to, as you say, I think as a young guy as well, like to be able to see the world a little bit, opens your eyes. I think it calms you down and kind of just gives you a broader view of the world, I suppose. I suppose that's an inevitable part of travel.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I am very green behind the gills, I'm afraid to say. When I went on board, I was not prepared at all. I mean, quick story. I guess they do this to everybody on board, but my first journey was actually 3.5 months going down to Brazil. We were traveling along the coastline, and it was to do with steel and soya at the time, transport it backwards and forwards, and then we came back to England, and then we were a week away from England and sleep at night, and I could hear a bit of rustling around in the corridor, and I looked underneath my cabin door, and there was an envelope from the captain. I thought, oh gosh, really, have I done anything wrong? What do I need to go and see him about? And they gave me an electric bill, and the electric bill was actually deliberately £2 more than what I earned on the whole trip.
Right, right.
You know, um, and when I say green behind the girls, I really did not know how to cope with that. And in the end, I went to see him, and he was absolutely brilliant. Obviously, got qualifications in drama, and he really coasted me along, And then at the end of it, he said, "Don't worry about it, lad. We do this to everyone." And yeah, so you kind of you know that they're going to play tricks on you, and they did plenty on the trip. So I wasn't really ready for that one, but anyway. We
Yeah,
learn all the time, don't
we
we?
do, we do. We had similar things on ships as well. Now I know where the origins of them come from. I think that one never happened to me, but we did do that to somebody else. It was somebody else's idea. It didn't come from my brain. But yeah, watching this poor chap go, nobody told me that I'd be getting an electric bill. And he's, oh, it's clearly mapped out in the contract, and and all of that kind of stuff. And people play along for ages. But I think that it's done with positive intention, and it's done with banter in mind. And I never had a situation whereby anybody, we didn't string people along for too long.
No, no, and I think, as you say, it's part of, we would call it team building, wouldn't we? Now,
Yeah,
it's part of that. When you're away from your family for a long time, it's about keeping a positive morale on board. Everybody knows that everyone's going to go through the same sort of banter and playing tricks on, and it's all about once you get back towards, you've been away, you come back to land, but everyone really, you want them to turn around and say, "This is a great crew, and I want to go back with them."
yeah,
That's what they're trying to build. So, and I suppose when you think about what we do now, that's what we want to do. When you finish the day job, you go home, but actually you want to go back into work because they're a great team,
yeah.
and so you can see how it gets replicated positively.
Yeah, that's how good cultures start, right? Is that fundamentally the very, very basic principle is that everybody gets on well, and
Yeah,
you don't have to be best mates, but the vast majority of people that I would now classify as my best mates have come from my working life. It's yeah, just by the way, I was the recipient of the old long stand one.
oh,
Yes, I
the
I went.
skyhook. Well, yeah.
Yeah, I went and stood in one place for quite a long time before it dawned on me that when the guy said to me, "Oh, I'm here," I said to him, "I'm here to pick up I'm here for a long stand." That's what I said, and he went, "Okay, just stand there then." And then just he went on with his world,
Oh,
and
dear.
it took me quite a long time to realize the word in my head was like, "I've just been done here, haven't I?" And yeah,
How
but
brilliant.
taken in the way it was meant, and we all had a laugh, and we all move on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, as you said, it very rarely sort of hits people in a negative way. We all learn from it, and,
Yeah.
and we go from there. No, it's great.
So were you hooked then from quite early on in terms of you knew that food is the thing for you?
Yeah, certainly not growing up. It wasn't particularly important to me, and certainly to my family. Or, I wasn't in a foodie family of any nature, so that was the first part for me. I mean, Harry Murray was the general manager at the
Oh
Imperial,
God, I mean,
right?
just drop the legend into
Yeah,
the mix.
he was the general manager, and he was, for me, even though I only met him during the days and it was passing. For me, he was a mentor in the way of behaviour, where he would stroll around the hotel and his priority was speaking to guests and getting their feel for it. And that type of behavior has become very important to me, particularly in my line now of speaking to patients and getting their view on things. So yeah, the way he held himself, the sort of the presence that he had, that was a real learning curve for me of how we should be proud of where we work and how we work. And I only saw him a couple of days ago, actually, at the Cateys, and it's good to see him in fine fettle and someone that we all admire.
I don't think there's any doubt about that. It's certainly an absolute privilege to have had him on this show, but also he interviewed me for a special episode of the show, which blew my mind because I was maybe, was probably going back about 10 years now, but I remember seeing him for the first time in my life speak at an event. And the way that he spoke about leadership and what that actually meant, and he's an absolute exponent of leadership from the front, or leadership, it's certainly in the way, I think you use the word behaviors. If you exhibit the behaviors that you want in your team, then people just buy into that, and whatever that behavior is, whether that's good or bad. So and he's a wonderful exponent of positive behavior. So then to go from that, where I was just, I was in awe of this guy, to then have a podcast where he asked if he could interview me for a special episode, and I was like, of course. Like, I've
You weren't
no
going to
idea.
turn that down, were you?
Yeah, I've no idea what you're going to ask me or anything. I don't want to know. Just to be interviewed on on the fly by the legend that is Harry Murray is definitely a highlight of my life, without question. An absolute gentleman.
Yeah, no, a super guy, and every time you see him at an event, you can see that people are looking at him and thinking, wow, what a person, what a career, but always has time for people, and isn't that the secret of success?
Yeah, yeah. People remember that for a very, very long time. I
Yeah,
think. Yeah, and your first, maybe first proper mentor, maybe indirectly, rather than a direct mentorship program or anything like that, but you're already picking up some traits and things that you are probably massively respectful of, that you carry forward with you.
yeah, I agree. You can't help but throughout your life, Phil, you build up people, where you want to look up to them, and you want to sort of mirror their actions and their words. And I've for me, behavior is a really important area. So it's, yeah, you're right. He was probably my first sort of person that I looked up to in the food industry.
Yeah, yeah. So the Imperial obviously played a massive part in your direction, I suppose, in terms of what you chose or how you chose to advance forward in your career. So tell us what happened next.
Yeah, well, look, I stayed in Torbay and worked at a local conference centre for a short time because it gave me a chance to go into a bit more of a chef manager role. At the Imperial, I'd kind of gone into a chef de partie role, so it gave me leadership in food, and I kind of wanted to extend that area. And I loved the South Devon, so it was super to be able to stay there. And that's where I met my wife, and my wife had travelled over from Scandinavia to learn English. She was already speaking better English than me anyway, to be fair. But it was more around, just sort of tightening up those skills. And she was over for a short time, and that's where I met her. She was actually on a 6-month permit, and I wouldn't let her go back. So this is where you get the collision course, doesn't it, of your career and your relationships, and things start to sort of then take a little bit of a different pathway, but it was an exciting time for me.
Yeah, I mean, where would we be without these moments, though, right? There are so many of these moments that you can only really fully appreciate, I think, in a moment of reflection as to the difference that may be made in direction. We've all probably had relationships that have sent us off in a different direction because, whether they've worked or not, but they definitely do affect that can affect the direction of travel.
No, definitely. And straight away, I starting to think, well, what does she want to do? What do I want to do? And can we stay in this area? And you kind of, you start to think of a wider pathway. But what it does sometimes do, it speeds up some actions, like the relationship actions, but often it can slow down other things, like your career pathway, can't it? As you said, it kind of, it moves things around. And I never had time to think about it while I was in it. But sometimes I look back and think, that was a really important time for me, where I learnt a lot in a really short time. I had almost a bit of a pause around food, and then I came back into it in later life, in a different way. So, those sort of breaks that you look at in the end actually are a chance to just reshape things.
Yeah, they're called the old sliding doors moments, right?
Yes, they are. They're
Yeah,
absolutely right.
yeah.
Yeah.
And we've all got them. We've all got them, and not even to do with relationships as well. You have maybe two job offers on the table at the same time, and you choose to go with one and not the other, and then maybe 5-10 years later, there's a little thing that goes into your head. I wonder what would have happened had I
Mm.
gone down that. But that's life. That is an inevitable part of anyone's journey, I think.
Yeah. No, definitely, and no regrets. That's for sure.
Well,
I,
you've got to say that,
even
haven't you, in public?
I, I hereby say, yeah. I mean, even on the career side, I don't regret coming out of that merchant navy. I don't regret going to Trust House for all those things. I think they give us a ground in, don't they? And you kind of hopefully take the best out of every experience.
Total, and I thought that's the word, right? Is the word? It's experience at the end of the day, and really, this is going to sound really philosophical now. Can't get through a podcast without some philosophy. So, but really, life is just a collection of experiences in the end, right? When you break it down into its simple form, and it's what you make of those experiences and how you see opportunity within those experiences and the value that it might bring to you, or the toughness that it might teach you, or all of these are all the things. We're just a series of experiences, really, in the end. And I remember for my 40th birthday party, I know I don't look that old, but that's actually 7 years ago now. And I remember talking when I did my little speech to everybody that turned up, and for me, being surrounded by people that you love and who love you back, and you get to share something with them, they are the experience, really, in the end. You're all of the people that come into contact with, and it's just down to you as to what you make of that. And that's something that came to me late in my life, but I think it's made me definitely a way more grounded person, more respectful of every situation I go into, because like when we met for the first time at a roundtable event, right, where we were talking about helping armed forces into the workforce. It was a brand new experience for me. So you get the opportunity to just do something that is different, and that's life. God, this got very philosophical, isn't it?
Yeah, it did. But you're right. Sometimes we're working really closely with people. You've both got joint targets on things, but we have very different experiences to get ourselves in that same position, don't we? And I think, as you said, we then join efforts with our different experiences to hopefully meet the targets that we set. And isn't it great that we've all got those different ones that we can share with each other, which hopefully give us all a bit of a bounce that we need to go on to the next objective.
Yeah, I think that's the key mentality as well, though, isn't it? Is to accept that other people's view of things is probably going to be different from your own. We have to then, especially in a role, I suppose, where you've got to pull lots of different people from lots of different backgrounds together to try and form some kind of plan. That's where the gold is, in the respectfulness of the fact that nobody in this room's opinion is invalid. And sometimes in leadership, I think some people struggle to remember that leadership is not about telling people what to do. It's about taking all of the views and carving, a vision or a strategy out of that.
Yeah, and that's what makes life so, so beautiful sometimes, doesn't it? Where you have so many variations in views, and it's being able to have those debates and those discussions, but in a positive way. And to be fair, I see that a lot where people are really striving, really working hard, and some are kind of floating along a little bit and look as if they're never going to be knocked off course. And yet we're all trying to reach the same destination. So yeah, we've all got different ways of doing it because we've all had those varying experiences. But yeah, it's never boring, Phil, is it?
It's never boring. No, no. Well, that's the old cliche as well, isn't it? That that people are what makes the journey interesting.
Yeah,
If we all thought the same thing and all did the same things, then it would just be so uncolourful.
yeah,
It's actually the various experiences from other people that makes your own experience more colourful. And I will believe that until the day I die. I don't think anybody could knock me off that. It's not always easy,
no, no.
but whoever said that easy was the right way to go in any case?
And sometimes those challenges or the times where you really kind of hit a wall, they are the biggest learning areas, aren't they? Where, as you said, maybe you have to work or meet with somebody that is going to be either challenging, or there's going to be a situation where the only way you're going to find a solution is by working together. But it's kind of, I suppose, just not thinking that you're going to fail. Find whatever, you will find a solution. You will find a way together. And sometimes, if you do it together, my goodness me, that is powerful. And you use that as a bit of a benchmark with that person, because you always go back to that and thinking, do you know what? With that person, I've worked really well to find a solution that I didn't think we were going to get. So yeah, it's there's always a positive out of it. That's for sure.
For sure, for sure. Anyway, we've kind of taken you off track of your journey. So you met your wife, not wife at the time,
No.
but your to be wife, and yeah. So how did things move forward from there?
Yeah, well, as I said, she's from Scandinavia. She's actually from the Faroe Islands, which is quite north of Shetland, between Shetland and Iceland. And you can imagine, I didn't know where it was.
Yeah.
Geography was never my strongest point, but
Well,
certainly,
it's usually football that helps me figure out where places are.
yes.
Oh,
And in
who's beaten Scotland today? That's normally what I say. And yeah, the Faroe Islands, I think, have done that in the past. But anyway,
yeah, no, in time that actually became quite important because the Faroe Islands were very much a growing nation around sport. So, yeah, I remember actually at one point seeing a flight to Faroe was actually not a bad price at all. But then I realised it was Faroe rather than Faroe Islands.
right.
And Faroe was in Portugal, a lot warmer than it is in the Faroe
I can only
Islands.
imagine. Yeah.
But it kind of we got to a point, I think, where we got married, invited the family over, likewise with our family, and we gelled absolutely beautifully as a wider family. And it became important to me to learn a lot more about my wife and about the culture that she came from. And again, looking back, I probably, in hindsight, was thinking if I'm ever going to do it, it needs to be while I was a bit younger and a bit more versatile to learn about things. So we talked about it and we decided to go back. And we actually lived in the Faroe Islands for 3 years. And we did that. In fact, my youngest son was actually born in the Faroe Islands. And it was a great time for me to understand where she comes from, the traditional life of a Faroe Islander, which was incredibly different to what I was brought up in my beliefs and in my culture. But I think it helped make me the person I am today. It shaped my character, and you have to. I had to learn to give way a lot because they've got their own language. They've got Faroese, which is their language. Then Danish is their secondary language. And even though English was their third language, they could also speak Norwegian, Swedish, and German.
Oh, wow.
So they were all, because being such a small country, language was very important for them on an educational point of view to if they wanted to go to universities and that. So, yeah, I often felt out of the light sometimes where conversations were going on and I wasn't part of it. But that was very important for me. Where my wife AJ she became the center of everything, and I think we need to do that.
5-star hospitality means having the right people in the right place at the right time, and that's exactly where RotaCloud can help. RotaCloud is the online platform that makes planning rotas, recording attendance, and managing annual leave easy. Its simple, drag-and-drop interface lets you create and share rotas with your team in minutes, while our built-in budgeting tools mean you'll know exactly how much you're spending on staffing before sending the rota out. RotaCloud also makes life easier for your staff, allowing them to check their rotas, request time off, and pick up extra shifts, all through the RotaCloud mobile app. Start your 30-day free trial today by visiting rotacloud.com/Phil and find out how much easier managing your team can be.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, again, another experience, right? And is this did salmon farming play its part at this point?
I did actually become a salmon farmer. So there are two kind of main different ways of being a salmon farmer, where you would either have this sort of stainless steel pier as you would walk out on, and then you'd have these square cages where you would keep these salmon in, or you would jump on a boat and go out to the salmon rings, which were further out into the sea. I was an absolute failure, Phil. How they put up with me doing that job, I will never know. I tried my best. I think the two things that I always feel I failed in, and the family tell me, no, you never, you did absolutely brilliant. Well, one was the language, and also one was the work life, and they looked after me brilliantly. But I do remember that we were late because you had to move around on boats a lot to get from island to island. There are 18 islands over there,
All right.
and
right.
we had a couple of nights in staying away on an island, and then the next day I was supposed to start work, and I got there late, and the boss was there, and when you look at Captain Birdseye sort of picture, it was like that. He was a big guy called Morstan. And he said, "Oh, yeah, come on, Philip, come on in, on you get." And he gave me the wheelbarrow, and I went out to the rings, and they were sorting out the fish, and they were lifting up the nets, and that's where you have to then put them into a wheelbarrow, and you wheel them back on land, put them into an ice box, and that. And the first wheelbarrow, with my father-in-law stood there next to Morstan, I wheeled this wheelbarrow up the slope towards land, and the wheelbarrow tipped over, and all of the salmon went straight into the sea.
Ah.
It was around 15 large salmon, 4 to 5 kilo apiece. Heaven knows how much they cost. But he didn't blink. He didn't blink at all, Morstan. He just said, "Get back out there." So, okay, straight back out there. And I never did that again. So I was very careful about what I was looking after. I was trying to do it quickly and trying to do it efficiently. So in trying to impress him on my first few minutes,
Yeah.
and I did the opposite.
Well, the old learn your lessons and move forward,
Yeah.
right? That's yeah. But I have to say, when I read your notes about this particular moment in your life, the line that you wrote, I nearly spat my coffee out, because it was I don't think it's maybe the most original line I've ever heard on this show, which is that my lack of skills in salmon farming while living in the Faroe Islands. Not a line I ever expected to hear in discussion on this show, but also a real wonderful demonstration about the richness and variation of journeys and careers, and and life, and how it takes you in lots of different directions. And it's not necessarily about the journey that happens to you. It's your response to how what happens to you and how you move forward.
I think it taught me the main thing for me, Phil, is that sometimes you have to be prepared to do something you're either not trained for or you're not prepared for. And you just got to do it to the best of your ability, And yes, I probably did that job thousands of times over that 3 years, and I only failed once, and that was right at the beginning. And I was doing that first effort was for the wrong reason, and it was trying to impress rather than actually doing it to the best of my ability. And yeah, it taught me a lot. It embarrassed me, and probably more than I've ever been embarrassed before, because I'm in a different country with people that I don't know, and I can't explain myself verbally in the same way either.
Yeah.
So it felt like I had to work really hard over the next few days to earn back, that badge almost, that I'm here to do the best that I can. But yeah, so I would say to anyone, never be embarrassed around failing. Never. You learn more from that failure than any success that you achieve.
Yeah.
And I will be forever thankful for those people that I work with. They were so kind to me. What was a really strange experience, Phil, is that I'm trying to learn Faroese over there, and they're all speaking English back to me because they're seeing it as what a great opportunity for me to improve my English, and that is to speak English back to Phil Shelley.
Right.
And I'm thinking, this is not helping my Faroese at all.
Yeah, well, that's that old chestnut. When every time I go to France and Italy, I have pidgin French, can get by, but an Italian little, I don't know what the bird down from a pigeon would be, but basically I'm that bird in an Italian. And we were just in Italy and France recently. And when you make the effort and then they speak English back to you, you know that the effort probably wasn't worth it in the end. That happens a lot. But I always believe like just keep trying, just show the respect enough to at least give it a go. And if they choose to speak back to you in English, then that's fine. Everybody's more at ease that way. Then that's also fine.
I've failed so many times in conversations that were going on, but do you know what? That I just really have always felt the love, particularly of the Faroese family, because they love the fact that I try. So over 3 years, you learn enough to get by work, to get by conversation, and I'm as confident as I probably will ever be. And of course, with FaceTime as it was straight after them, but then into WhatsApp videos now, we speak to them every day. And being able to speak to them in their language they love that.
Yeah.
That's really important to them, that I've made the effort. And that's what it's about, isn't it? It's trying to meet them in a way halfway. It probably isn't halfway, but it's as far halfway as I can get it.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, I think what you've highlighted to me as well is that there's a chance now that we might get a Faroese download for the podcast. I'm not sure we've had anybody listen to the show from the Faroe Islands before. So, breaking new ground here as well.
Yeah, I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will. The family is very large, and I'm sure they'll tune in at some point.
Fantastic. Well, a big shout out to them if they're listening to this right now, wherever it is that they are. Then it's much appreciated in any case. But yes, we should crack on because the time is ticking quickly.
Okay.
So how long were you? Did you say 3 years in the Faroe Islands?
Yeah, 3 years in the Faroe Islands, and then it's time to. I mentioned Daniel was born in the Faroe Islands, and then we decided we would come back to England, and we aimed again for the southwest. I was kind of brought up as a lad in Taunton in Somerset, so we came back to Taunton, and we bought a house there shortly after Andrew was born, my second lad, and yeah, that's when I kind of got into the pub hospitality trade for a short time, only for a couple of years. And again, really thought, this is great. This is another chance to show off my skills. And it was probably during that time where there was another real, as you say, sliding door moment for me. And really great mate of mine that I met through school and college many, many years ago. It's called John Smith, very famous, of course, for beer. Although he likes his cider, he's not the same John Smith. And he kept ringing me up. He kept contacting me and said, Phil, you need to come and work in the NHS as a chef. And I can tell you now, my reply wasn't always pleasant, thinking I'm a hotel restaurateur, chef. Why on earth would I want to go into the NHS and serve food? And he kept saying to me, you will get it. If you come here, you will understand the difference that you can make. And in the end, I thought, you know what, I'm going to give this a go. And that's when I joined Somerset NHS Foundation Trust, as it was then, and joined him as head chef. And it was from that moment on that began my sort of NHS health service career as a chef, and then going on into leadership roles from then onwards. So that was kind of, in a way, the beginning of a final destination for me.
Right. Yeah. So, if this might, I suppose this might age you, but how long have you been with the NHS now?
Yeah, nearly 35 years now.
35.
Yeah.
Goodness. Which
Yeah.
tells you everything you need to know, that you've absolutely found your home in that sense. And to still, as you said right at the beginning, around the fact that you still have such enjoyment for the job that you do, that it just puts a smile on your face. And I can see that in the very limited conversations that we've had already. You're just, as a human being, you're in a good place. That's definitely the energy that you would emit, at least.
No, I agree. And I often say to John, him and I are big cricket fans, and we're members down at Somerset County Cricket Club, and we often sit there and we talk about those moments where we had those calls, and then also the early part of our career in the NHS, where to be fair, it was a very different place to where it is now. But yeah, I feel incredibly privileged. The people that we serve, the people that we work with, and it gave me the biggest opportunities in the world, Phil, and I am eternally grateful.
Yeah, no doubt. So, interestingly, if we go back to that call with John as well, the perception that you had in that moment is perhaps the perception that still exists today. I don't know. I'm thinking off the top of my head, really, in terms of if you were coming from a restaurant background and somebody came to you today and said, "Oh, there's a head chef job going at your local NHS trust." My feeling is that the vast majority of those chefs would go, "Not on your life, mate. That's not my angle." So has anything changed, do you think, from a perception perspective in terms of what a career in the NHS could actually bring to you as a chef?
I think you're right. I think to an outsider, somebody who isn't involved in food at all, I think there will always be that perception around, prison school and NHS catering, particularly around that public sector. I think anyone knitted into the industry at all probably has a different view now, and that's because chefs across the industry, and looking at particularly something like the Institute of Hospitality, where it has widened its outreach, and therefore you get all these conferences and award ceremonies where all these different culinary experts and leaders are meeting together and sharing each other's experiences. So I think we all understand that we're all trying to do the right thing. I mean, this week we've had some regional heats for our NHS chef competition. That food that is okay, it's competition level, but that food that's being produced is as good as anything that is being served in restaurants around London and Bristol, wherever you are. So we know the skills are there. So sometimes, as you say, perception, it can be misleading. And that's probably been one of the biggest drivers for me, is around changing that perception.
Yeah.
And and that will continue even when I hand on to the reins to other people. It will continue. It's not a short journey, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So a 35-year career so far as well, just getting started. Just talk us through some of the progression of your jobs within that time to get to where you are now.
Yeah, I had a really fantastic catering manager called Bob Whitlock, and Bob passed away some time ago. But he did say to me, "Phil, you've got a real chance to make a difference here as a leader. But sometimes what you need to do is step away from the people you're currently leading, go away and lead another team, and then you come back. And you sometimes need that breakaway from the people you're almost working with right now, because you're seen as one of the boys, aren't you? You know, and that taught me a lot. And Bob was very kind to me, so I kind of moved sideways and managed the retail team. So learned a lot around profit and sustainability around retail food. That was fascinating for me. And then he invited me back in to lead patient catering in the same trust, and that was, you know, terrific. And unfortunately, Bob passed away, and I took over from Bob, and then went into the wider facilities roles, which, you know, pick up on things like portering and cleaning, the commercial of car parking and retail outlets within the wider hospital setting. So very quickly, I was starting to get that kind of wide-angled lens on what happens in an NHS trust, and had my CEO, Peter Lewis, who's still in Somerset NHS Foundation Trust. You know, he was great, and, you know, some of his words to me around, you know, you're the food expert, just go and do it, and then if you need to come and see me about anything, come and see me. You know, it's that kind of just get on and do it, and then come back and pray for forgiveness, isn't it? Almost.
Wow, that's better to ask for forgiveness than permission when you're trying to make change.
Is let people breathe, let them go off and do it, and, you know, don't sort of micromanage, and you know, let experts do what they're good at. So yeah, I was given really quite a free rein, and I loved it, absolutely loved it.
Brilliant. And then take us home into how you got into, because it's a hell of a title. It is a hell of a title, what you're doing now.
I suppose my first lead into it was while I was facilities manager in Taunton. I belong to the Hospital Catering Association, and it's a great national body where all the caterers get together and work with each other across the regions, across the 4 nations, and it's incredibly dynamic and going from strength to strength. I was asked in 2014-15 to be the national chair, and at that point, that's when you start to understand, you know, that there are a lot bigger factors in how catering needs to work and needs to be. I was given a couple of opportunities to have some one-to-ones with Simon Stevens, who was CEO of NHS England at the time. Big topics for him were around food waste, and also about bringing venison into the NHS, which we're now doing, you know. So wow. Things, you know, it takes time, but we've now got venison on 15 sites around the country. You know, so, and we're now managing food waste. So you think those conversations we first had with Simon, they've taken time, but they're now in progress. I think once you get into a role like that, you get that sort of nationally, you get known a little bit, and you get drawn into roundtables and conferences and things like that. Once I'd done my 2 years stint of chair, you go into a past chair role, and then you're kind of in the background supporting. And then unfortunately in 2019, we lost 7 patients through listeria. And listeria as a bacteria certainly can hit the vulnerable and the elderly, because it affects those meals that kind of don't go through the preparation of being cooked. So particularly the high risk foods of salads and sandwiches, raw and cooked meat, soft cheeses, things like that. So that happened, and it made the headlines quite quickly.
Yeah, they always do, don't they?
Yeah, and, you know, and understandably so, and still now we have to manage that area really carefully. And it was during that time that Matt Hancock, who was the Secretary of State at the time, decided there needs to be a root and branch review of hospital food, and that was announced in the House of Commons. So we all knew that there was going to be, you know, a real major dig of where we are with food in healthcare, and where does it need to be, and how are we going to change it?
Yeah.
So that was the big step for me then, Phil, really.
Right.
I was approached to lead the review, and that got me working with Prue Leith, who I, you know, again, still communicate very regularly with. She often messages me, does me short videos on, you know, supports me in conference events. But leading that food review over a sort of a 1.5-2 year period got me into a very different space. And from then, following that review, we obviously I moved into this role here to manage the food recommendations, the food standards, and that brings us kind of up to speed.
Yeah, brilliant. Geez, what a career, and also like the ability to affect something which, for the vast majority of us, I think would say is massive. It sounds like a massive job, but I'm guessing, and I kind of know your character from the couple of times that we've met as well, is that you would probably be the first person to say that you're not doing this alone, and that you couldn't do this without this amazing team of people around you who all bring something unique to the table.
No, absolutely. And when it got to the crux of how is this review going to happen, the first thing I decided, something called the Power of Three was really important to me, whereas caterers, dietitians, and clinicians, and if you work closely together, then anything is possible around food. And I asked that we have an expert panel, and it's kind of 15, 16 people around the table, and they're all part of that Power of Three, and they have as much input as me. So this review is not the Phil Shelley review. It is the review of healthcare catering teams with all their support behind them, whether you're in-house, whether you're managed by an FM provider, so everybody, I felt, had an opportunity to feed in. And therefore, the recommendations kind of reflected the challenges that they face every day.
Yeah.
And I've always felt that when I talk to people about the review, they always say, do you know what? I read the recommendations, and it reflects the day job. And that's how why would you write a review or a paper that really people read and think, I don't recognize this at all?
Yeah.
It needs to be recognizable, and those challenges are what everybody faces.
I know you probably can't comment on this being centrally employed by government, but those of us on the outside can say things like this. You can say no comment. That right there, what you've just said, I think is maybe the layman on the street's biggest frustration with policy making generally, is that it feels that the policies are dictated to, not discussed, and actually bring everybody to the table to come up with something that works. We might not even put this out into the show, but I'm just it just came into my head there as you were saying it. The value of what you've just created there is effectively happened because you're doing this with the people that it's going to affect, and therefore their opinion and the people who specialize in that particular area is incredibly valid in how you approach that going forward.
Yeah, and I think, but making it an independent review helped, so you do have a, and with someone like Prue Leith, who kind of is always she's always going to say things that you're not expecting, and she's coming from a very, very different angle. And she was very keen to challenge me and challenge the profile of the NHS. So that was really important. And to be fair to the Secretary of State at the time, those recommendations were all accepted and were really pushed through. And, I'm really proud of all the work that team did. And, it was the catalyst for change. That's what it was. I always think now we go back to that point, and it changed. It changed, I think, the perception from within looking out. Now it's our job to change the perception of outside looking in.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll never guess a note that I wrote down there when you were talking about that was the Phil Shelley review, and I thought that sounds like a cracking night at Ronnie Scott's. Yeah, did you play any instruments, Phil?
I was at Ronnie Scott about a month ago.
Were you?
Yeah, and it's all about the experience, isn't it? And for me, that's what it was. Yeah. Funny enough, I used to play brass instruments when I was at school, because I remember when I was at school and I took RE and music. I was the only person that chose religious education in my year.
Right.
That's out of 200 people, and there was only 3 of us that chose music. And I was pulled into the deputy head's office. And he said, "What's wrong with you, boy? Do you want to be a church organist or something?" And it's that kind of, sometimes you think, I actually don't know why I've chosen these subjects. It's probably because I know enough about them,
Yeah.
So yeah, music's always been important to me, and I'll have to think about that strapline, Phil.
Yeah, that's why the Phil Shelley review sounds so natural. Then, as that's a set I'm down for. But no, there's a couple of things I just want to touch upon before I let you get on with what is undoubtedly a very busy job, I'm sure. But it's just really the line you filled in on our form around funny things that have happened, and anytime somebody puts down on that, which hasn't happened, I don't think ever again, by the way, a number 10 call. I can't let that go without exploration.
No, and I suppose as anything, when you're prepared for most things, you can sort of manage them, can't you? And I was not prepared for that call that day. Typical busy morning at work in Somerset. The phone rings in the office, and it could be anything from an exec to a manager to a cleaner, a porter, a chef. So you kind of prepared for most things. And when he says, I'm Patrick from number 10, I'm kind of thinking, oh my gosh, have I not put the bins out this morning? Is that message of
Just number
who
10
is
down
that?
the road.
Yeah, I was thinking that's all it must be. It must be number 10, just down the road from me, and he's checking up on me in any way he can help. And as the call went on, I suddenly realized, oh my gosh, it is number 10. And that's when he went into a bit of detail to say, just to let you know, you're going to receive an official call from somebody later on, and they will ask you to lead the root and branch review for hospital food. And when you put the phone down, you think, I've just made myself look a right idiot on that. But luckily, it was all in my mind of what I was thinking. I didn't say anything. I just listened. But yeah, I suppose my message out to anyone is just be prepared. Be prepared, because you never quite know what's going to happen on a day in the NHS.
Yeah, well, it sounds like it. What would have made me even happier in that story, Phil, is if somebody from number 10 then came through on the call and said, don't forget to put your bins out.
They know me too well. I'm always the last one.
Oh, brilliant. But so this is the wonderful thing about why I still to this day love doing this show, is to meet people like you and to talk to you about your journey and in a tiny little bit of detail. If there was no limit on time, then I'm sure you and I could have a couple of pints and just chew the fat until the cows come home about stories from within the industry and all of that kind of stuff. But think about the moment where you spilled salmon into the sea and look at the journey that's led from there into now. And these things blow my mind, is that and maybe this was a byproduct of why I wanted to start this show in the first place, was I think a lot of people look at the people that they look up to in the industry and just see this beacon of perfection that I would like to be one day. But you don't get you can't get perfection anyway, but you can't get anywhere near perfection without making more than a few balls ups along the way. And even to this day, I'm sure there are moments that you don't get right, and you learn from it and you move on, and that's probably the secret sauce, I guess, in the end. But just another example for me of a really fabulous career, somebody who's doing, it sounds like, what they were born to be doing, and making a significant change to the future of what we could all expect if we ever have to call upon the services of the NHS, which is probably also another inevitable part of our lives.
Thanks, Phil. I mean, it's, I really appreciate the opportunity just to kind of give a brief outline of, my career, but really my pathway. That's how I see it. Everyone's got a different pathway. And for me now, it is about supporting others, as well as guiding those that are in leadership in the NHS right now. I continually be very proud of what we do, but we can always be better. So it is challenging people in the right way, and doing it in a way where sometimes it's an arm around the shoulder, sometimes it's a little kick, but I can promise people that I hope it's always done in the right way, because it's our ambition to be the very best person that we can be in what we do. And as you said, it is a privilege to be in the NHS, to be in the wider public sector and now playing, a fuller role within the Institute of Hospitality. I absolutely love what I'm doing, and may it continue as long as it can.
Hear, hear. I could not have put that better myself, and it's been an absolute pleasure to get to know you over the last couple of months since we met at that round table. And another wonderful byproduct of our industry, I think, is that networking opportunity to be put in front of people that you wouldn't necessarily cross paths with under your kind of day-to-day role.
No, absolutely. No, thank you so much, Phil. Let's just make sure we have that beer at some point.
I am all in. John Smith's, perhaps.
John Smith. Good call.
Nice one. Thanks so much, Phil. Take care.
Take care.
And there we have it, the wonderful Phil Shelley. Who else could mix salmon stories, number 10 calls and genuine leadership lessons all in one go? Absolute gold. We will of course be back next week with another awesome journey from hospitality, so have yourselves a cracking week, and I'll see you then.